I love to read a book and be absorbed in words to escape.
Hello all, so I know I'm creating an awful lot of tags lately, but I just keep getting notions in my noggin. Hopefully it'll get us all talking about stuff that's fun and enjoyable and book related and whatnot. So this one I've given the really open-ended title of The Fabric of Life book tag. It may not make all that much sense, but it made sense to me when I thought of it at like 12:30 last night. Okay, so a book that I associate with birth, the idea of birth, the theme of birth, that sort of thing. One book would be Birthmarked by Kara O'Brien, and I only got through a tiny bit of this because, as you may or may not know, I'm somewhat anti-maternal, so I can find it really difficult to read about birth as an event that's taking place, but also as a theme, and especially if it's something that's given a lot of weight. Pregnant women in this society, it's very a revered thing to be giving life and to be producing children. Another one for birth would be Lips Touched 3 Times by Lani Taylor. This is a collection of 3 short stories, and especially in the latter two, which are Spicy Little Curses Such as These and Hatchling, especially in Hatchling, birth is a really big theme and is actually quite a foreboding, dark, troublesome event that takes place within these narratives. The idea of birth and what it can symbolize and what it can mean for what will occur to you during the course of your life and during the course of your child's life and such in the particular worlds in which these stories take place. So I thought of that one, Lips Touched 3 Times by Lani Taylor. A book you associate with childhood. Well, for me, books that I link back to my own childhood, certainly. 2 of them would have to be Little Princess and The Secret Garden. These were books I read when I was a child, and so it certainly links to my reading as a little girl, and also just the things that I used to like reading about when I was a kid, and the kind of, I guess, literary heroes I had as a child too. So I loved Sarah Koo, I loved Mary Lennox. So these are kind of like, I guess they were my contemporaries as a child, and they were, you know, my own age roughly when I was reading these books. So certainly those 2. While I didn't read this book this series as a child, I was a teenager by the time Harry Potter was out and about. Certainly just the feel of it, especially for the first novel, Philosopher's Stone, Sorcerer's Stone, makes me reminiscent of childhood. The differentiation back then between being a child and being an adult, and how that can seem like a really vast, wide barrier between the two, and how that can cause some problems for you, especially if you're a kid who's being ignored or misunderstood or not given enough credit, that sort of stuff. So Harry's struggles made me remember, you know, how it can be really difficult to be a child. I think sometimes we tend to over-glamorize and over-idealize the years spent as a child. So I don't know, Harry was, oddly enough, given that it's a fantasy story, I think it's a nice slice of reality too. Teenage years. Okay, so for me, again, this is me personally, growing up as a teenager in Australia, and having read these books when I was a teenager in Australia. 2 books that certainly I remember. Thunderwit and Chrysalis, both by Libby Haythorne. I always say Hawthorne, but I think it's Haythorne. I read these when I was a teenager and really loved them, and the protagonist, Lara, was a teenager, obviously, and it's set in like a rural area not too far away from where I live, so certainly that really rings true for me and her experiences and whatnot. Okay, coming of age. Different from teenage years. Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte I think of as a coming of age story, and not in the very distinct ideas that we associate with the term coming of age. I think this is just the idea of a person growing into themselves and feeling like they're getting to be capable of handling their own lives and sorting out their own emotions and what they want to do. Just the sense of yourself, growing into yourself, is something I really associate with Jane's story. And this isn't a novel, it's a play and a musical, but Spring Awakening kind of speaks for itself. Adulthood. I've got a few choices here, and they're strange ones. I read Bridget Jones when I was like 13, 14 years old, but I thought it was, from the adults in my life that I knew and know, I thought it was a fairly apt portrayal of adulthood. Bridget's shenanigans, I think, you know, even though they're a little bit extreme at times for the sake of humour, I still think they're pretty credible and true to life. Nick Hornby's work I associate with adulthood. I especially liked About a Boy because it, even just relating to me and the struggles of trying to find your place in life and you like getting a sense of career or anything like that, struggling with money, that sort of stuff. So yeah, especially when I read About a Boy, that's adulthood for me. Later years, that's my nice way of saying when you're older, elderly, the elderly stage of life. I'm wording it terribly. Kate Morton's work, like Forgotten Garden for example, because it traverses back in time, so a lot of it's about reminiscing about the past from a character who is in the later stage of her life. So that was something I think that it portrayed it with a lot of sympathy and empathy, but it didn't try to make it too sentimental. I like something like Nicholas Sparks' The Notebook, because they're an elderly couple in this one, and yes, it deals with Alzheimer's, so that's probably taking a cliched notion, I guess, of old age, but again, I like, even though it is corny, and we kind of love Nicholas Sparks because he is so corny, I still think it was nicely handled. But because we dealt with birth, we're kind of going to have to deal with death, so this is the really unhappy topic of death. An obvious one that I'm sure a lot of people will probably mention is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, but certainly death is obviously a theme and an idea, and a very ever-present threat that hangs over the whole course of the book. So it's there from the outset and makes itself known, but I think that it's still handled quite nicely. One that I think may not be as obvious, because I don't think nearly as many people have read it, is A Certain Slant of Light by Laura Whitcomb, dealing with ghosts. That sort of goes hand in hand, the theme of death, but it's more so about the value of life in the face of death, the need to try and cling on to anything living and anything that's still present, because you have that's what you've lost, and the really ever-present desire to try and gain that back. And so I think it's kind of viewing death from a different angle, of viewing life from the point of view of death, sort of thing. And now I'm trying to weave some stuff in here that aren't just the stages of life, but the fabric of life, if you will. So books that make you think, for example, of school or education. One book for me that certainly reminds me of school in Australia is Looking for Ella Brandy by Melina Marchetto, because she's doing her HSC, which is the final exams we have to do in order to gain entrance to university, and so that's certainly all the stress and all the pressure and all the annoyances of that year of school is certainly something I can remember very well, sadly. And yeah, so just the bad, unhappy, unpleasant side of education, certainly I remember when I read Looking for Ella Brandy. Pseudo-intellectual novels that have been quite popular, so Dan Brown stuff, like Angels and Demons or The Da Vinci Code. I think of education just in the fact that you do get to learn some really random stuff because you're in the presence of academic, scholastic-minded characters. So, you know, you get to spend time immersed in that sort of setting, and so you're learning a lot of random, if not, you know, valuable facts. I'm very slowly trying to make my way through A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness, and it has the same kind of feel as Dan Brown's works in that it's set in a world of academia, so you know, in Oxford and in the library a lot of the time, so you're sort of getting to learn things, if you like, so it just has that feel of the atmosphere of learning, if you will. A book that you associate with work or career. Interestingly enough, Lily Wilkinson's Love Shy made me think of it a little bit, simply because it was the idea of a teenager and dreaming of her career ambition, which is to be a journalist, and how she was trying to weave it into her everyday life and what she, like her activities day to day, and the fact that she was striving for this as a career goal all the time. So that was interesting just from a teenager's perspective. About a Boy by Nick Hornby, because it's from the perspective of a character who doesn't work and just kind of lives off the money that his dad inherited, and so he's perceived as a slacker by everybody, and he is to a certain extent, and it's kind of the idea of seeing it from the perspective of someone who doesn't work, trying to mingle with everybody else who has work and, you know, has a career, and sort of look down on this guy. So that's something I kind of thought of, just because it's, yeah, a different angle. Books that make you think of marriage and or relationships, because it has the metaphor of time travel as being certain things that can impinge on a marriage and difficulties you face during a marriage. The Time Traveller's Wife is probably a really obvious choice. Books by Sharon Owens, they're kind of chick-litty, if you want to use that term. I don't approve of that term. But they kind of take a large array of characters and kind of just intersecting their lives throughout. So there's lots of adult relationships being examined in different ways in her books. So The Ballroom on Magnolia Street is one of them. I've mentioned this in a few tags and stuff recently, but An Equal Music by Vikram Seth, just because I really liked how it dealt with one specific couple and the intricacies of their relationship, both past and present. Books that make you think of birthdays or anniversaries, those kind of celebrations. Wildwood Dancing by Juliet Marillier, and it is a take on the 12 Dancing Princesses, so they kind of have this notion of a celebration that they do every year because they're scampering off to go dancing in the wood, and it comes every year, so it's something they anticipate with pleasure and they build up to it and always getting their dresses ready and the excitement that's leading up to that. The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, there's a build up to the anticipation of the circus opening in a different city, in a different town every time. Also, it's something you get to see, you witness year after year, the participants of the circus and how they feel towards it every year as the years pass, how things change, and how the atmosphere grows or recedes, that sort of thing. So it's sort of time passing with the events occurring. Bitter Greens by Kate Forsyth, because there's the idea of birthdays, impending things looming ahead, actually have a really foreboding feel throughout this novel. Birthdays tend to signify the change in circumstances, the change in lifestyle, the change in where you're living a lot of the time for the three women that are concerned within this book, so birthdays often come with a really negative connotation. Holidays, trips or travel. What books do you associate with those sort of themes? High Society by Ali Carter, and obviously they're not travelling for the sake of travelling in this book, they're going on heists and trying to prevent heists and stuff, but they're going all over the shop. They're going to Austria, they're going to Italy, they're going to France, they're jumping all around Europe, and so it's certainly a book that makes me think of travel, for sure. Associate with the notion of a holiday would be Nicholas Sparks' books, because they are like your atypical holiday reads, like beach reads. Really easy to get through, really quick to get through, easy to travel with. The Fabric of Life tag, I hope it made some sense, and that you can understand the rules. I'll put it all in the doobly-doo in my pants. If you find that you can't associate books with some of these topics, it's totally fine to skip them. I just tried to interweave a heap of stuff and see what we can work with. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that, and I'll be doing some more tags, and see you all later. Goodbye.